Our party is fighting our rival, a hobgoblin with lots of magical items and gear. We are slowly losing due to the hobgoblin's high AC and our terrible rolls. In a moment of brilliance, our party rogue decides to attempt to lockpick the armour off of the hobgoblin. He gets into an argument with our GM about why he couldn't do that. The GM remarks that locks are stationary and don't try to fight back. The rogue asks the rest of the party to dogpile and immobilise the hobgoblin so he can remove the armour. The hobgoblin proceeds to cleave down almost everyone in a single hit. I say, fuck it, and manage to push him off of a cliff with the GM fluffing it as him disappearing into the river below swearing vengeance. The rogue and GM keep arguing about how undressing and lockpicking differ. The GM remarks that the hobgoblin's armour was magical anyway, so it wouldn't have worked. Back in town, the rogue wants to enchant his lockpicks so they could pick magical locks. Anyway, should the rogue be allowed to use the lockpicking skill for other things than picking locks? Also, could other skills be used for other purposes in a similar fashion? Our GM wasn't yet 100% sure if he would allow it or not. Personally, the only armour I'd let your lockpick off is a chastity belt, but that's just me. The Nubian Goddess, also known as the worst player I've ever had the displeasure of sharing a table with. Buckle up everybody, because this player is an absolute mess of a person and I couldn't make this shit up if I tried. There are 5 players here: myself, Christina, the DM, Isaac, and Mark. For a bit of context, Mark is a man in his 40s who came from another city to live with our good friend Isaac. He is unemployed and has been crashing rent-free in Isaac's living room for the past year. He is a Trump supporter despite living on every single form of government assistance there is. Despite disagreeing with his politics, we love Isaac and wanted to give Mark a chance. Oh boy, was that a mistake. Here's a few highlights of his behaviours from past campaigns. Falling asleep during the game sessions, playing computer games on his laptop during the game sessions, eating well over half of the food provided, getting frustrated with the DM when questioned about how his character works and throwing shit as a result. Generally, just bland, boring characters. Now, I can forgive bland and boring characters, but this most recent campaign, just yesterday, was the absolute worst. Aggressively offensive. Mark took a break from D&D for health reasons, and we hadn't seen him for weeks and decided to give him another chance. His newest character is a 6'7" drow woman named 22. Yes, as in the number. Some offences include referring to his character as a Nubian goddess several times, dressing his Amazonian character in a tiny white bikini and letting us know that her pubic hair was shaved, otherwise you would see it, letting us know that her nipples are always hard, flirting relentlessly with Christina's character. His character knelt down in front of her and gave some spiel about how she'd be able to give her sexual pleasure beyond her wildest dreams. Then, throughout the campaign, his character kept calling Christina's character her love. Christina admitted to feeling uncomfortable and harassed after the game, flirting relentlessly with NPCs and going into details about how many times she bedded a gnome. He said she would make out with a horse if it got her to achieve her goals. The kicker? This character supposedly has a natural intimidation ability like Frightful Presence, so she is somehow simultaneously terrifying everybody she meets, but also overtly sexual. We've talked to Isaac, who claims Mark will tone it down, but I honestly don't want the guy back at the table at all. Patronising Ranger tries to flirt in and out of game. So this is nowhere near as horrible as some of the other stories on this sub, but it was still the most annoying tabletop RPG experience I've had so far. The titular event happened in May of this year. I've been a casual Pathfinder player for about 3 years at this point, only on Roll20, and was interested in learning 5e and really wanted to join a physical, real-life game. I had started a new job in March of this year and ended up making some friends who were big D&D 5e players, and the 3 of us set about finding a DM. My 2 friends are a lot less shy than I am, so they ended up finding a potential party to join really quickly. We ended up finding a bar in town that hosts D&D games and found a DM willing to take us in. They were just about to start playing Dragon Heist and needed extra players. So we arranged that after work on Mondays we would all play at the pub. There were other party groups in the pub with about 25 people there altogether. Myself and my 2 friends were the only women there. Our DM was an older man in his 50s and was honestly really sweet. He had been playing since the 90s and this would be his first time as a DM. There were 3 other players in our party which we will call Kobold, Gnome and Ranger. The 3 of them were boys in their early 20s or late teens. My 2 friends I shall call Druid and Eladrin. We built our characters then and there, and this is where the trouble began. I admit that I was a bit of a noob compared to my friends when it came to tabletop RPG experience, so I was still really lost when it came to the various methods of writing character sheets. I was used to rolling for stats because I am a child of the uncaring, unbiased fairness of the chaotic universe, but this time we were allocating stat points for our core abilities. I wasn't 100% sure how to do this, so I asked for help. Ranger came over and explained the process to me, which was great. I thanked him and finished my character. However, he seemed to interpret me asking for help in one instance as me being a complete newbie to the entire game and needing help with every single aspect of the game. He also, by proxy, assumed that Druid and Eladrin were both new to the game as well, even though they've been playing D&D for over a decade each. Now, the Kobold was actually brand new to the game and was constantly asking his friend Gnome and Ranger questions about the rules. Gnome was a cool guy and was helping out his friend, but Ranger was just so focused on assisting myself, Druid and Eladrin, even though after that initial request we never asked for help. When we eventually did start playing, the Ranger's assistance really began to be a problem. We were thrust into combat instantly, and anytime it was myself, Druid or Eladrin's turn, he would interrupt us with a huge smile on his face and tell us what we should be doing on our turns. He never did this with Gnome or Kobold. They were allowed to play however they wanted, but us? No. We weren't allowed to get a word in. I'm quite shy, but Druid is not, and I could see her beginning to seethe. The DM was quiet and non-confrontational, but was kind enough to let us get a word in and decide what we wanted to do on our turns. Ranger didn't stop though. Even during roleplay heavy sections of the game, he would interrupt and take over when we were talking to NPCs as he knew what he was doing. Like, bro, you have 13 charisma, calm down. He also did this with a big smile on his face and often shot winks at me and my friends. It got really awkward when we had a little bit of downtime in game, and the bunch of us started role-playing our characters getting to know each other. My character was a 20-year-old cleric who grew up in a very strict monastery, and thus was rather socially awkward. Myself, Druid, and Gnome started joking about relationships. Druid's character was basically from a hippie commune, and Gnome's character had a wife and grandgnomes. My cleric mentions that she's never had a relationship, and Mr. Ranger decides that it is appropriate to state very loudly, "So you're a virgin then? Interesting." The table just went quiet. I glared at him and continued in character saying, "That's none of your business." He did that stupid wink again and said, "I could make it my business." I didn't come back to the next session, or the session after that. Eladrin and Druid kept going for another week before quitting too. I was sent a message over D&D Beyond from Gnome saying he completely understands why I didn't turn up, that Ranger got really angsty when I didn't turn up, and his method of flirting just came across as really patronising. The party fell apart a few weeks later. There was another issue with the DM not being particularly good at being a DM. He was a really nice person, but never prepared for a session. We would often stop for 20 minutes or so to allow him to read ahead in the adventure, and many times when we stopped to engage in some roleplay conversation, he would stop the game and start talking about his characters from games he played years ago. I hold no grudge against him, and I hope he learns how to DM better. But Ranger? Dude. Looking back on it, Ranger was obviously excited at the prospect of 3 girls joining his party, and began to try and impress us by acting smart. Did I also mention that he was like 19, whereas me and my friends are in our mid-20s? Well, anyway, months have passed, and Eladrin, Druid, and myself are happily part of a live D&D party DM'd by my boyfriend of 4 years that Ranger had no idea about, and are finally having a good, fun time. TLDR, Ranger treats myself and other female party members like we know nothing and constantly undermines our choices and patronizes us. Gets weird when he tries to flirt. I just leave. If you've made it this far, I want to say thank you. At this stage, I plan on making 2 videos per week for the Critical Shit series. If you have a story you would like me to read, or if you just have any sort of feedback you want to give me, feel free to leave it in the comments below. Currently, I am very new to this, so any and all help would be greatly appreciated. Until next time, keep the dice hot, the drinks cold, and the DM happy.